Hey, this is Tyson here with Mod Called Digital, and then this is the second basically in my series of building out a CRM with Laravel 5.7. I know it's been about 3 weeks since I did part number one. That's of course because I got busy. I had our third kid, my wife and I, and so yeah, not time to do much anything else. But in this one, basically we'll look at where we left off. So this is where we left off. We created kind of a heads-up display or a dashboard for our web application here, and we haven't done anything, say, in the users section yet. There. The other thing we're still looking at the Laravel main page that comes out of the box when you install Laravel. So some of the things we're going to do here to start, one, I'm going to want to get rid of this. I don't want it directing to this page anymore. We're going to have basically all of them direct to our home page. So we'll look at creating some routes that way. Perfect. And then from here, you can see there's nothing else we can do. But what I want to work on today specifically is building out our users display. So we want to be able to manage users in an application like this, because you might deploy this, say, on a client-by-client basis, as opposed to, say, creating a SaaS product. And that's really the viewpoint I'm going to take it from. I'm not going to look at, say, building out something that we have one large database for. We have it's basically meant for a bunch of different companies. I want to do this so that it's basically a template for every other customer you might work with to build out something like this. So for that reason, we're going to keep things pretty tight as far as being able to add additional users, and we will just add, basically the administrator will add the users on a need-by-need basis. So we'll basically get started with this then. So the first thing I'm going to look at doing here is we're going to actually start by creating a different route here. Actually, before we get to our routes here, let's add one important thing here, because I didn't have it added in the last tutorial I did. It was basically adding a new role field in here. So the role field, we do need to specify a specific role that the user is going to have, and we'll get to that when we actually build out the form, which will be after we work on our routes and things like that. So what I'll do, I'll get you right now, if you have your original project, go in there, add this, between email and email verified at, add this string. So table string role default user, and now we will get back into our routes. So right now you can see with our routes, and as you probably noticed this time, I've made the fonts and everything much larger than I did last time, so it's easier for you to actually see. But we'll go to web, we'll work with our routes here first of all, so you can see just / sends us over to our welcome view. We want to send that basically over to the home view, or to the login page. Now, fortunately, with our authentication that we set up with Passport and everything, in the last episode, it'll automatically redirect to a login page if the user, of course, isn't logged in. So this is really simple here. We'll say route get, and let's see here. How do we want to do this? Well, basically, just copy and paste what we have in here. So we'll do this. And clean that up after. So we're going to take it home. If we're dealing with just a / we're still going to want the same thing. Semicolon, we're good to go now. So anytime, let me see here. Are we running our server? Yes. Okay, we are running our server. So that's good. I've done this here. I ran it on localhost 9,000 as opposed to 8,000 this time, and then serving up the public folder. So that's pretty straightforward there. And I'm already logged into my database. But now, if we go over to our main page there, anytime we just have the / it should take us to our main page. So we can go / or we can go / home. It doesn't make a difference. Basically, our routing is correct here. So, okay, so that works now. So the other thing I want to do, so we got rid of basically, we don't have to look at the default Laravel page that comes with it. Now, one thing I want to do here, because we're going to play around with the users table, I want to be able to quickly redo my migration. So I want to be able to quickly redo my database tables and also redo the and be able to add basically a single administrator um, username and password, so I don't have to go register every time. And then actually what we can do in a situation where we create a database seeder, which automatically creates user information or whatever you want to seed into your database. Because we're doing that now, when I actually go and say, as I'm testing out, adding users, verifying everything works, I can quickly and easily delete all of those tables, rebuild them, and then seed them with my administrator password. So we'll look at doing that next. Now, creating a database seeder is pretty simple. It's an artisan command we use. So we'll say artisan, and we want to make a seeder. And what we're going to call this seeder is, we'll say users table seeder. Okay, simple enough. Okay, seeder created successfully. Now, where we can find out our seeds is we go under database, we go into seeds right here, and you can see we have two things here. Now, when we actually run our seeder, and I'll show you how that works with a Laravel command, you have to make sure that it actually shows up in the database seeder. So we don't necessarily have to populate every database as we go. We can say as we're testing out, like doing an invoicing system, or we're adding estimates or things like that, whatever tables we create, we can do it on kind of a table by table basis here by commenting these out. So automatically it's commented out, but basically Artisan created this for us, and we have this down here. Now, just like you would say in your say a user's controller, which we'll create coming up here, you'll be able to you basically add to the database in a very similar way. So what I want to do here every time I refresh my migrations is I want to create a user, and we'll say create in here. And just like we would insert it into the database, which you haven't really seen as of yet, myself do, but you will see it. So just to give you an idea of the schema of that actual table, we'll go MySQL, and I'll just go describe users, okay? And then it's going to show us the things that we need to put in here. Another place we can actually look here, which would be better, because things like created at and updated at, this is all done automatically, so we don't need to add anything in there. But what we can do is we can actually go over to our users model right here, and we need to do things like add a name, email, password. Another thing we're going to have to add in here is a role for the user as well, and then a password. So it's basically just the fillable ones here, basically these four that we want to put in here. So let's go back to our users table seeder. We'll say name. I'm going to put my name in here. Oops. Of course, it needs to be a proper string. It's going in there, and then we need to do email. So email is going to be, we'll say t@modcall.com. And then for the role, in this situation, we're going to do a admin role each time. And then for the actual password, now we do need to hash our password. So to see how Passport does that, that's as simple as going up to the controllers here, our authentication controllers, and then we'll do register controller. And then if you go down, 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 in order to, let's see here, in order to make it, we can see they use the method here of hash and then make. So that's fairly simple to do, and we'll just pass in the password, which is going to be password in that situation. So that'll be easy enough. So we'll go users, table seeder, we'll go hash, make a hash, and then we just put in password. So every single time it's going to be password. If we don't do this, then it's just not going to work. And I'll give you an example of that actually. Let's say we just put in password there, and then let's go out to our PHP artisan command. We'll say PHP artisan migrate. We're going to refresh our migration, and we'll activate the seeder. Now, of course, we need to look at our database seeder. We do need to uncomment this out because this is the function that Artisan is going to run, and then it's going to reference the users table seeder in that situation. So we should be good to go here. Okay. Oh, what happened? V to see more details. Okay, so here's our problem right here. We can see class user not found, and that's because, of course, I didn't import the user class, the user model right here. So now that's done. We'll save that. We'll come down here. Let's run that again. Perfect. Okay, so we're good to go now. Don't worry about any of this. This is all done with Passport, so we don't need to worry about migrations for those particular tables. But now, when we go over to our database, we can go select all from users, and you can see we have that in here. Now, the problem with this, you see I put password in here. It's not, it hasn't hashed it at all. And of course, we need to hash it because if your database is ever compromised, you don't actually want them to know what the password was. So we basically need jumbled up numbers, letters, things like that. If you're familiar with this, then you know what I'm talking about. If not, I'll show you here what's going on. So what we need to do, instead of showing password, I'm going to use hash. We're going to create a hash. Oops. Okay, and then we're going to pass our string of password in there. Makes sense? I hope it makes sense. Let's run that again. Now I refresh it every time, of course. And then we'll do seed. Oh, still dealing with the issue. Okay, so once again, I made another mistake here. I have to import this class. Okay, good to go. All right. Let's try this one more time. Oh. Users table seeder. Component, create password. Sorry, you know what? I'm using the wrong method. It's actually make. My bad. Okay, let's try this one more time. Okay. Okay, so we're good to go. Let's go back to here and we'll see if that's in there. So now you can see this is just a jumbled up hashed password. So basically it makes it harder. If somebody does compromise your database and they look at all the passwords that might be associated with particular emails, things like that, this isn't going to make any sense to them. They're going to find it next to impossible to actually find out what the password is that was entered. So that's why we do that, hash make. Otherwise, it wouldn't even let us log in because, of course, Laravel on the back end, Passport on the back end will decrypt your passwords to verify that it is actually the proper password that's being used. So, all right, so that's simple enough there. That's done. So now basically anytime I want to refresh, or, as I'm testing out my users, inserting users, things like that, I don't have to have a database that's full of users in there. So the next thing we're going to look at here is let's go and create. Let's see here. There's a couple things we need to do. One, we do need to change up our routes here. So we want to make sure that, say, on the back end when we actually go to the user's view, that it's only, basically all of this is only accessible from an administrator. So there's a couple of things we need to do. One, we need to basically need to add some middleware which verifies that the person is an administrator before they go in and are able to create users. But what I want to do first here is I want to create basically a user's view, a user's administrator view. So that one's fairly easy to do. Let's go to our views, which is in resources. So I'll close this out here. Routes, resources, views. Right now you can see we have a home.blade.php and then a welcome.blade.php. And then we have admin. So that would be the general one. Now we're back into our admin. This is basically the view that we see when we first log in. As an administrator, it's going to default there. And what I want to add in here is basically a users blade.php. Okay. Simple enough. We want to bring in, from our layouts, we want to bring in app.blade.php. So that extends, this is using blade templating, okay? And we want to do admin.layouts.app. Okay, so that if you can kind of see how that's going to work. Basically, it's going to bring in the structure of our document, and then we're going to add our content down here. Okay, so we'll go at end section. Fair enough. Okay, probably going to have to do a little bit of reconfiguring of our file structure here. If we look at, say, let's close this out and this out. We know this works just fine. We'll close this out as well. We'll close out that for now. Okay, so this is our app.blade.php. Right now, everything is contained on a file-by-file basis. So, like if we take a look at our menu on the left-hand side, all of this is part of the one document. Now we want to pull this out basically as a component. So we're going to create some components with our blade templating here. And then, so it's easy for us to pull this in every time without having to go crazy on the coding. So I want to go layouts. I want to go, we'll create a folder called menus. And then we'll do sidebar.blade.php. So easy enough. And then we'll go over to our index here, and basically the side menu comes in right here with this card class. So we'll cut that out. This also allows for flexibility, like if we want to have a different menu, we want to change up our menus, we can do that in this situation. Okay, we'll save that. Now this becomes fairly easy. Sorry, that's my dog in the background. Sidebar.blade.php. So we'll go back to the index here. We'll make sure that that gets pulled in properly. So just like you would pull in regular components, just like you would pull in, say, for example, extends admin.layouts.app. We're going to do the same thing with the components. So we'll do admin.layouts.components.menus, and then we'll do .sidebar. Okay. Okay, so let's go back and make sure that this actually worked for us. Oh, we got a problem here. Not found admin index.blade.php. Okay. So let's make sure everything has been spelled out correctly there. So admin, layouts, menus. Okay. That's my problem right there. I didn't actually create a other folder. Okay. So you can see now that's actually working for us, and that's working pretty good. Next thing we'll look at now is our actual routes, because we want to create something that's going to go to this view for managed users. Actually, let's finish off the view itself first, which would be good. So we can pretty much take all of our content in index.blade.php. Let's see, what do we have here right now? I've got everything within this section. Okay. We'll copy that. And we'll paste that in there. Okay, that makes sense now. And from there, I want to, from there, let's start out. We'll start out basically by building a form for what we have in there. So let's get rid of column-md-2. Let's get everything but the end of the last div. Cut all this out. And let's just put a little comment in here. Nope, sorry. Which will basically be end of dot row. So we know where we are next time if we decide to copy and paste from this one. And we'll do column dash sm dash 5. And this is where we're going to place our form. Now we can start say by building out our form within this section, but it would be actually nice to pull in, say, the forms as a component. So let's say, so we'll create a directory here, new folder, layouts, and within the layouts, let's make a components directory. And then within the components, let's make a forms directory. Okay, a forms folder. And then we'll create a new file in here. This is where we will modify all of our form stuff. So we'll call this the add_user.blade.php form. Okay, and then from in here we can start to create the particular form that we need to create. So that's it'll be fairly straightforward creating the actual form. We're just going to use Bootstrap classes again. So we'll start out with form. We're not going to be directing it to any kind of a route or page quite yet. We do know that the method is going to be post, because whenever we create or make something new, typically we do that with the post verb. Okay, and we'll give this one an ID because we're going to use some JavaScript just to clean it up a little bit here. We'll say new user dash form. Okay. And then it's very important to add this CSRF. This is a built-in function method with Laravel. It basically prevents people from hijacking the form or the data being passed through it by creating a unique token. So this token is submitted along with all the other data that you submit, and then Laravel on the back end goes in, verifies it that the token does match that what's in the database, and yeah, you're good to then submit it. So you always have to add this, or it's not going to work properly. So we'll say form-group, and the first thing we're going to add is basically a label for name. All right, so we'll say new user name. All right, and then we'll make that an input, type equals text. Class is going to equal form-control. And then we need to put in a name, which is going to be name. All right, and then we need to do another form group. Some other things we're going to do to this is some validation. And you'll see this when we actually build out, say, the user's controller. If our validation doesn't pass, we want to basically show the user, hey, what didn't pass and why didn't it pass? And of course, Laravel makes that really easy for us again. But we'll build out basically the structure of our form to begin with and then look at all of that. So, all right, so we'll create a label in here, and then this one's going to be for the email of the user. The user email. Input, and then we'll do form-control here, and then we'll go back and make it name, and then we'll say email. And all of these fields basically are going to match just as it's going to go into my database. Group label, and we're going to need to do a role, and we'll say select new user role. Now for now, we're only going to have two types of roles. One is going to be user, one is going to be admin. We're going to default to basically the user role. And then down the road, when we want to add, say, an admin, we probably want to add another layer of authentication there. So maybe like email authentication, you get sent a token via email. in order to verify that you do actually want to add an individual as a administrator, because of course that's going to be important in any organization. You might not want a disgruntled employee coming in and changing that data up. So we'll do this as a select. Again, .form control, and we're going to call this one role. I don't really need an ID for this because we can reference everything by name too. Create an option in here. The option value is going to be user, and then we're going to just make sure that it always defaults to that. User, and then we'll do another option, which is going to be admin. Oops. And then we'll say admin there. Okay, we're good to go on that one. And then we need to add a password and then a confirm password. So we need to add 2 more fields in here. So form-group, label, password, enter new user, temporary password. Now the reason I'm putting a temporary password here is we're going to want to give individual users to control, say, what they enter in for their own password. So down the road, what we're going to want to do is basically send an email again with a token, or basically the first time they log in, they're going to use that password, but then they're going to be prompted to change their password on the user end. So of course that's all going to be taken care of in the actual user's view. Right now we're just building out the administrator view so that we can kind of work our way down from there. Type is going to be password. We'll put that in there so that it's blocked out with dots or stars. Name is going to be password, and the class is going to equal form-control for our actual styles. All right, we'll do .form-group, and this is going to be for our confirm password. Confirm password, and we'll say confirm password, input, again password, we'll do class equals control, the name, confirm password. Okay, so the next thing we want to do, we'll go back to users and we're going to insert this particular component in there. How do I want to do that? Well, I guess we'll do that with component. Nope, not comment. Component, and then we'll find this component, which again is going to be an admin .layouts .components .forms add underscore user .belay.php. So we're not really seeing the fruit of this quite yet, but we will see it very soon. So that should pull in our component there automatically. Probably one other thing I want to do here is I want to create a button above this one. Actually, let's put this in a card first of all, so it actually looks nice. We'll do card. We'll do card dash body. Dash body, and then in here I want to put a button with a class of btn, btn dash block, so it's going to take up the full width, and btn dash primary. All right, and then this one's going to be add a new user. And I basically just want to, just to clean things up, I want this to basically be able to, we'll create a toggle for this so that it displays it or not display it. Or you could do it so it creates, opens up a modal. That's another option there. I'm not a huge fan of Bootstrap modals simply because there's something that interferes if I have more than one modal. There's lots of workarounds you have to do, or at least my knowledge of Bootstrap 4 in how that works. So I don't want to necessarily create a modal in this situation, but I definitely will later on in this course for you. So show new user form. I create this as an ID because in our JavaScript, what I want to do is I want to pull in. I basically want to assign a variable to that particular object in the document object model for us. And then down here, I'm going to cut that out and I'll put that up here. All right. Okay, we should be good to go there. Now, the other thing we need to do, I'm going to go right into our authentication. I'm going to go into our middleware. I'm going to create a new piece of middleware before I create our actual route. So you'll see how this works. So I want this middleware to, actually, you know what? Let's not create it this way. Let's use Artisan to create it. PHP Artisan. We want to do make middleware, and we want the middleware to be check admin. So it's basically going to return true and allow us to move forward into this part of the dashboard if it is, if the person is actually has the role of administrator on their side. So, oops, should be good. Middleware created successfully. Okay, so we have check admin in here. So this is fairly simple. We do need to bring in the current user information, and that's fairly easy to do with particular sessions. So we'll do that here. This time, hopefully, I won't forget to bring in the actual class into our model. So current user, this is going to check for the current user, and then we have a property of role within that user, and we want to make sure that that's not equal to, or if it's not equal to admin, we don't want to redirect them. So this is fairly simple. We'll say admin, and if they're not an admin in this situation, actually, let's do this. I forgot to add my if statement. Okay. So if it's not admin, they're not an admin, then we just want to send them to, basically redirect them to whatever their home page is going to be, right? So home there, and we'll test this to verify it all works after we create our first few users, but we should do this before then. Okay, so we created check admin. Now what we need to do is we need to go to our kernel. We need to add that to our list of middleware. Middleware. We'll do that in here. We're going to call this one is admin. Okay, and we will do, we'll go /app http /middleware /check admin, and that's going to be the class there. Okay. Okay. Now what we can actually do is we can go in and we can create our routes under web. So I don't have web pulled up there, so let's go back down to routes, web. Okay. And this is fairly straightforward. And what we'll do here is we'll go route. I'm going to create basically a route group, but we'll do this we'll start out with middleware itself. We're going to bring in the auth middleware, of course, because we want to verify that they're actually authorized to access the backend, period. And then we're going to use is admin, and the is admin we use because that's the one that's referenced here in the actual kernel under route middleware. Okay. And then from there we'll call this namespace basically admin. Okay, and then it's going to be under group. And then within the group we'll do function. Now from here we can actually create our individual routes. Okay. From here, we're going to make a users controller so that we can do things like, first of all, if somebody types in the route to view the users, we want to show them kind of the user's heads up view. And then we also want the ability to, say, create or store users in our database. So the next thing we'll do here is we will create a users controller. So PHP artisan make controller, and we'll say users. Actually, we have to put that in. How do I have this organized here? Controllers auth. We're gonna make admin here actually. So we'll say admin for the folder. Actually, I'm gonna make that capital A. And then, okay. But I didn't actually have to do that. I could have added, just put in admin slash controller there. So we'll say users controller. Okay, you see that pops up there. So we've got our users controller in here. Now we don't need to do anything with the constructor because we don't necessarily need to run any middleware or anything ahead of time because we've done that with our route already. So all we'll do from here basically is we will create a store function. Actually, we'll create an index function first of all, or method because we are in a class. And this is going to basically display the particular views that we've created. Now, one thing we want to do in here is we do want to display all users that are in the database. We want to send that data along. So that's pretty straightforward here. We'll create a property within this method called users, and then we'll pass that along with the actual view. So that's pretty simple to do. We'll return the view in here. I'll say admin .users. The reason I'm going to do admin.users is we're actually going to give it a name, so it's easier instead of doing / this or that. And I'll show you as we go back to the route to handle that information. So we'll say users. This is going to be the name of the variable that we'll then use within our Blade template. And what we want to pass along in there is users. Okay, so we give it that particular value in that situation. Sorry, I mean admin.users, that's the actual file we're going to reference, which will take you right down to resources, views, admin, and then you can see users.blade.php. So that's the page that's going to show the view it's going to show for us. So what we can do now is we can go back to web here, and we can then add that particular routing in there. So we'll say route get admin /users. This is what you basically coming through your URL, your URI. And then we'll reference the users controller, and then we reference the particular method of index that way. So that's easy enough. And we'll give this one basically a name. So if we're ever going to do like a redirect or something, simply by typing in redirect or route, when, say for example, we want to submit our form, we can also use a name instead of, say, the actual /. So it makes it a lot easier on our end, and you'll see what I mean by that if it's not clear right now. All right, admin.users. Okay, so we should be good there. So every single time you go admin/users, it should take you to our page there. So let's see if it works for us. All right. And let's go, we'll say admin/users. Okay, we got one issue here. It says app HTTP middleware auth not found. Okay, so let's adjust this here. Okay, so the problem we ran into here is, once again, I didn't actually import the class. So that's an easy fix for us to do. And I'll be honest with you, that happens so often. Just something you forget to do. So check admin, and this is going to be in your check admin, and under the middleware, we'll bring on the auth class. And let's see what happens when we refresh that. And we need to bring in the user class as well. the user class from our controller's admin user. Okay, that's another easy one to do. Users controller, app user. Okay, now let's see where we're at. Add underscore user .blade.php not found. Okay, so let's go take a look at what is going on there. So basically in users, admin.layouts, .components, .forms, add underscore user .blade.php. Yeah, so the issue here is I added the .blade.php. Not having a fun day. Okay, there we go. So easy enough. You can see our menu shows up here as a component, and then of course everything is in there. The other thing we forgot to add in, of course, was our button to submit everything. So let's go get rid of this. We don't need to deal with the kernel anymore. Let's go add user, and then let's add a button down here with a class of button, and then btn.-block, and then we'll also do btn-primary. Okay, and then we'll say add new user. We'll refresh that. Okay, perfect. Now this doesn't submit anywhere right now, or it shouldn't submit anywhere right now quite yet. New user form. Okay, perfect. So that's in there. That looks good. Now what we can do here is we'll set up a post route for us under web. So we'll say route. This is where we're going to submit all of our forms, and we'll say admin/users/store, and then this in our users controller. This is going to take us to the store method, which we'll create here shortly. Now, for the sake of our routing, we'll route it with, we'll give it a name of admin.user.store. Simple enough. Now, let's go back first of all to our form. Using our label here, we'll say route, and then we'll say admin.users.store. All right. But that basically, I'll show you what it looks like when we actually say view the HTML or view the source code, what that actually inputs in there for us. And then we'll go back to our users controller and we'll create public function store. We need to bring in the request, and you can see I don't actually have to bring that class in. That's automatically brought in. And then this is basically going to store everything from our form. This is where basically everything from our form is stored as it's passed through. Now, a couple things we can do here. One, I'm just going to data dump to show you, to see if the stuff is actually coming through when we actually click on it. So let's go back to our form here. We'll refresh. admin.users.store is not defined. Okay. Admin.users. Okay, so the problem here, I think, is I put users instead of user, which is what I should have on here. So let's go back to our routes. Admin.user. Okay, and then we'll go up here. .store. Okay. All right. Well, let's go back. Okay, I haven't put that actually in there yet. So let's say admin/users. Okay. We'll just put some blank stuff in here. Don't need to worry too much. And then we can see it. So everything's been data dumped in here. And then you're going to actually be able to see like you know, what actually came through on our form. So if you click on request parameters, you'll see, okay, name came through, email came through, role of user, password, and confirm password. You see this token comes through. So I was talking about adding CSRF. In there, that basically adds this and then verifies with the database that, hey, you know, the request came from this particular form. So, you know, let's do stuff with it. Pretty straightforward there. So everything's coming through, which is great within that request variable. So now what we can do is we can work on things like some validation, for example. Before I do that though, let's go to our menu, the sidebar menu, and let's add the route in here. And then let's take a look at what we gave the route name to access that page. Okay, so we'll go web. In order to add that, so we'll say admin.users. I might choose to do something like admin.users.view. That might make more sense as an actual name, but in this case, I'll just stick with what it says here. So let's go back to here. Every time we click on that, oops. Yeah, we should be good to go. Okay. Let's go to our main page. Okay, so everything works just fine there. Okay, so let's go do some validation on back in our users controller. Validation is pretty straightforward. It comes with the request class built in. So yeah, so it looks pretty good. So I'll show you how that works. And basically with our validation here, if there is an error, it's going to send those errors along to basically the last page that we were on, or basically the page that we submitted from. So this makes it very easy. We don't need to create any kind of return statement, view, redirect, things like that. That's all automatically done with the validate method if there's errors within there. So within here we have a few different things coming through, inputs coming through. So a name, yes, we need a name. So we're going to make that name required. Require that they have a name, and I want to make sure that it's like a minimum of 10 characters. Well, we'll say 6 characters, so that it's not empty, right? When we do that, say email. Nice thing is Laravel has a bunch of these things already figured out for us. I don't want more than one user. Say with, I don't want one user with like under multiple. Sorry, I should say I don't want multiple users or one user that has multiple accounts using the same email. So we want to make sure that the email coming through is unique. So we'll say unique. We're going to reference the users table to view that. So we enter in users there. And then this is going to be an email coming through. So we'll validate it as an actual email as it properly should. Role in here. Role is definitely going to be required. And that's about it for that. Password, now we have password and we have confirm password. So we're going to want to make sure that it is the same as confirm password. If those two are not the same that come in, then you'll redirect them back to that page, and we'll put in some validation errors with regards to that. So, and then we want to make sure that it is the same as confirm password, which would be the one directly beneath it. And so we'll say confirm password. Boy, I'm having a fun day. This is a weekend for me, so maybe I'm just not in the working mood or mode. Okay, so just as a recap here, name, it's required. So if there's nothing in there, it should come back as it'll come back as an error. Same with email, role, password. All of these are required things. Email has to be unique to the database. So if there's another email within the database in the users table, then that'll spit out an error as well. And then yeah, and then the things won't work that way. So let's test our validation here by going over to our form. And let's just, actually what we want to do, we want to display those, we do want to display those errors. That's important. So way we can do that is we'll create an if statement in users.blade.php. We'll create an if statement, if $errors. All right, and then the way we can show these errors is so if there's an issue, it'll just basically redirect back to that page, and we should be good. So I'll refresh this page here. It's probably going to ask me to log in because I stepped away from my computer for a couple of minutes. Yeah, okay. And I might edit this out, I might not. We'll see how it goes. Never. Okay. So we'll just go add new user. Okay, and then you can see here it spits out the errors. Okay, so there's lots of things we can do with this, the way we can display this. Probably the way I want to display this right now is just with some Bootstrap classes. So if you've ever looked at the documentation or you've worked with Bootstrap forms before, you'll see each of these boxes will highlight in red, and then we also have the opportunity to put a message under it. Now, the great thing is you can see here under name, the name field is required, okay? So Bootstrap, so Laravel already gives us what the error is, and there's very little modification we need to do to it, if we do any modification at all, which we don't really have to do in this situation, because hey, you know, it's red, you did something wrong, probably figure it out. So not a big deal there. So why don't we plug that in basically under add user underscore form. Okay, and we'll start, let's see here, where's our format? Okay, so add underscore user. And we'll just start putting in some Bootstrap classes here. So is invalid is a class I'm going to use here, and then I'll add a little div underneath with the actual message of what the actual errors are. So very simple here. Let's see here. I'm going to do a lot of copy and pasting in this situation because it's what we do to utilize time better. Okay, errors has. So if it has an error of name, because we're in the name input itself, then we want to show basically is invalid. So this is shorthand, basically a shorthand if statement. Okay, invalid. And if it's not, then, you know, we'll do nothing. So that should work. So we can see, so let's make sure this works before we copy and paste it over. All right, we'll refresh. Variable or string, syntax error. String errors. Where is my error at? And maybe you've spotted it before I have. I don't know. Ah, there's a problem. I'm not using the method. Okay, that should work for us now. Okay, so we'll do nothing in here. And you can see it's working. Okay, so let's copy and paste that for basically all of them. Apologize if you can hear my kids in the background. Let's see here. So copy, and then we'll change this one to email. And then select. And then this one's going to be role. And then this one's going to be password. And then this one is going to be confirm password. Okay, so this should work for us. What we can do here too is we can go in and basically add in our error messages. So the way we're going to add in our error messages, let me see here. We'll go at if, kind of like we did up above there, and we'll say if errors, and again we want to use that has method, has name in this situation, then we'll do that and if. Okay, and then we'll create a div here with invalid feedback. And again, this is just straight up boot class classes that we're using. And then we'll print out that particular error, what that error is. So we'll do errors first, and then name. Okay, we should be good there. So again, let's make sure that this actually works for us. What mistake did I make this time? Oh, once again, what is up with me today? Okay, there you go. So the name field is required. So we know that everything works properly now here, so we can go ahead and copy and paste the rest of that, change over the names, things like that. And in the meantime, I'm printing out errors here somewhere. I know I'm printing out the errors. I'm printing out the errors in users.blade.php. So let's get rid of this. We don't need this anymore because I showed you basically what that does. We'll back to add_users, and we'll just copy and paste this after each input, okay? And then we'll change it to email in both places. And let's do that after the select here. This is going to be role. All right. And what's the other thing? We got password confirm. And then we'll go password confirm. Okay. Okay, let's see here. So let's go back out, check it out, see how it's working for us. Add new user. Okay, fantastic. It all works. Now it doesn't work here on the select new user role because, as a default, there is a selection for them, and it always defaults to user, which we want. We never want to have something default to admin. And then, as I mentioned here, later on in the course, what I'm going to do is I'm basically going to set up like an admin, email confirmation thing, just in case, just for an extra layer of security. So, okay, so first of all, we know we're passing our variables through. We use DD to show all of the data that was passed in the request. And we know that our authentication is working just fine. Let's just test this out one more time here. So let's see what happens when I do this. Okay, so you can see no error pops up for this. And probably what I'll come back and do later on is I will, we'll do two things. One, we'll do our validation on the front end as well. Front end, if you have it both sides, then that's great. So when somebody say, they go in the input box and then they go out of the input box, they focus on and then they focus out, it'll basically produce if there's any kind of an error. So I'll show you how we do that in JavaScript later on. That probably won't happen with this one. And then, so the next thing we want to do is we basically want to pass this data into the user. So we want to add this to the database next. Okay, so let's do that. So where we're going to do that is in the user's controller. It's pretty easy. We can use the user's model that we already have, which is great. It's already been brought in, so that's good. And it's pretty easy. There's definitely a few ways you can do it in Laravel. I prefer to use Eloquent as much as possible, which is an extension of Laravel, as opposed to, say, just the standard functions that come from from the standard Laravel library for working with the database. So from here, first thing we're going to do is we're going to hash our password, kind of like you saw when we did our database seeding. So let's say user_password, and we're going to make this equal to hash make, and then we're going to use request dash password or confirm password or whatever. That works there. Okay, so this is easy enough. We'll do, so user is going to be equal to basically a new user instance. If I can learn to spell, okay. And user-name is going to equal request name, okay. User-email is going to equal request email, oops, and so on and so forth. You get how this works. User-role is going to equal request role, and user-password is going to equal user_password. And then we save that. Okay. And then we need to basically redirect back to the user's page. So that's pretty straightforward there. We'll just go return, redirect, and we'll redirect that to admin/users. Okay, and then we're going to send it with a message that's stored in the session as a session variable, and that's going to be called success. All right, and our message is going to be successfully added a user. Now, as you know, we already put that in there up here. So session success, we have to call it this, otherwise we've got to change the name of the variable. So basically, if this is successful, let's cross our fingers. Everything should go through. We should get a success message all the way back. So let's just go again. Okay. So you mod call, let's say you at modcall.com. And then password. Okay, so things look good on the front end. Let's take a look at our database now and see if that was properly added in. And you can see you mod call blah blah blah. Yeah, so it's hashed. So the whole password is hashed properly in there. So things are secure that way. Okay, so we're good to go on that. What do we do from here? Well, I mean, there's some things we can do now that we have some users in our database. We can actually start to display them. So why don't we do that next? We'll go over to the users. Let's see, this is becoming a bit of a mess in here. We don't need this, we don't need this. Index and sidebar we don't need as well. Keep that open. Users.blade, okay. So let's create basically a card to list out to list out all the users that we currently have. So we'll create another column here, sm-5. Oops. Need that to be a div. Perfect. Actually, you know what? We should probably fix this up too. Not that we're going to look at it in a mobile device setting, because this, like most CRMs, you sit down and use it basically. So, okay, so let's create a card here, and then we'll do a card dash head. Okay, and then we'll call, then in the head we'll just say current users. All right, and then instead of card dash body, we're going to use a UL tag to do this, and we're going to put in there a list group and list dash group dash flush, so everything looks nicely aligned and there's no extra lines that we don't need in that card to make it look good. Okay, and then from here we're going to create an if statement. Basically, if the user's variable does exist. So now we should always get one user because the admin is always going to be in there. So I'm not going to worry too much about verifying that. But we'll go to our users controller here. And in the users controller, because we're basically sending it back to the users route, we are going to add user all. Okay, so we actually already have that in here. I might have put that in there earlier. I don't remember. Anyways, but that's basically how you pass the variable in as part of the view, any variables you want in there. So how we collect this variable on the other end here under users.blade is, first of all, we'll make sure that it exists, which it's going to exist. We know it's going to exist. Let's double check the spelling on that. Yeah, users. Okay, good. So if users does exist, then we want to execute some code, right? And what we'll do is we will execute a for each loop to basically go through our, you know what, I gotta start using the autocomplete. Okay, perfect. So each users as a user, okay? Now we'll be able to collect, we'll be able to use information from the user passed through. So this one, what we're gonna do to start, we'll just use an li. And we'll just show basically the name to begin with. Probably in the next video, I'm gonna go through you know, how we can do edits, like if we wanna delete a user, things like that on there. So list group item, and then in the list group item, we're gonna show the user name in there. Okay, so every time we load this up, doesn't matter if we're redirected or not, it should show in here. Okay, you know what, let's make this header. Okay, we're good to go. So it's showing the list of all of our users. On the right-hand side here, we'll probably show like edit, delete, things like that. Some things I want to do kind of on the side is, the reason I added this button here in the beginning is so that we could basically hide this menu here to add a new user. We could do it as a modal. I believe I mentioned that already. In this case, I'm just going to use it so it pushes the content down, opens up the form. So we'll do that next. So we're going to get to look at a little bit of JavaScript and playing with the DOM, which is kind of nice too. Instead of just focusing strictly on the backend using Laravel. So the way I want to do this is we're going to use another Blade function of push. We're going to, because I don't want this script loading on every page, you know, I like to keep things as efficient as possible. I want a particular script to only load up at a particular time. So what we're going to do is we'll go to our public folder, okay, JS. We're going to add an additional script that we can pull in here. So I'm going to pull this in as admin script, and then I'm going to pull in basically users.js. Try to keep it clean. This is the way I think about all this. And then we want to add, kind of like we deal with components or anything else in Blade when it comes to pulling in, you know, including particular files or views, then we do this way. So what I'm going to do in this situation is I will use layouts, and then I'll do scripts. I'll create a folder for scripts. Okay. And then I'm going to create basically an empty file, which we may fill up down the road if we have scripts we want running later on. Okay, we can load all those in here, but basically what we're going to do is we're going to push onto this document the users.js script. And so so the way that we do that is we'll use the function of, we'll do this just at the end of end section. We'll do push. Okay. And it's going to be, so basically we need to find the location of it, which is going to be admin, layouts, scripts, and then scripts again. Kind of sounds redundant, but it's what we're going with here. And then from here, we'll add in what that script is going to be. So script with a source of, and then we'll use our built-in Laravel function to basically call this asset. And that one's called asset. It's in our JS folder, because asset automatically goes to your public folder in this situation. Do admin users.js, And now we should have that file actually pulled in to be able to use. So we can take a look at that. Let's put a little thing in here. Let's say, make sure that it loads when the document loads. We'll run all these scripts. The reason we want to do that is we don't want it acting on, we want everything to load before we use it, right? So this is how we do that. If you've worked with jQuery, or if you're familiar with JavaScript, you understand exactly what's going on here. Let's go document dot. Could just be document dot body. Doesn't matter. Document or document dot body. Not going to really matter here. We'll do console dot log, and we'll say loaded. Loaded our script. Not as in loaded as in we had too much alcohol. Okay. Now let's see if this one actually loads up with the page. So, but actually, before we do that, we need to add. Pardon me. We need to add basically. We need to add this to our main app template. So let's go back to resources. We'll go into views, admins, app.php. This is kind of where everything else enters, right? So, and then just before the end of the body tag, we'll include the admin.layouts.scripts in there. Okay. Now it actually has something to append to in the document. Okay. So now we can go over here. We'll reload this. Oh, okay. We'll log in again. Okay, and we can see loaded. Okay, so perfect. Okay, so now we can apply the rest of our. We can do the rest of our JavaScript in here. So we'll work on that next. And what we basically want to do is, get this element to hide. Which should be good. Okay. This is our JS. So the first thing we're going to want to do is comment this out for now. Pardon me. Okay, so within here, we'll create a couple of variables. The first variable we want to target is we want to target that button. But we don't necessarily have to target the button itself. So we want to target this button. So show new user form. So we'll say show form button is what we'll call that one. Okay, so show form button. That's going to be equal to document.get element by ID. Pardon me. And then going back there, it'd be show new user form. I'll just copy and paste it so we don't have some typos in there. I also want to target the form itself. So we'll say new user form. We'll make that equal to document.get element by ID. And let's find out what we named our form in there. So form is actually under add user here. New user form. Okay, perfect. New user form. Okay, so from here, every time this page loads, we want to hide the form. So really easy way to do that, we'll say new user form. And we'll affect the style. We need to give that a style of none. If we just say declare that in our CSS script as none, it's not going to register in the, in the DOM. Just a moment. So we need to specify that here as none. So when the page loads, it'll automatically hide. It'll automatically hide that. Now we want to create an event listener on our show form button. We'll say on click in this situation. Okay, and then we'll console log this just so we know there was actually clicked. And so you can see that that part actually worked before we start applying anything else. Okay, so let's go back to that page and we'll refresh this. Loaded doesn't show up anymore, but when we click on it, you can see that shows up in our console. Perfect. Okay, so let's refresh that. Let's go to, let's create an if statement. we'll say if new user form dot style dot display is equal to none, then we want to change that style to dot style dot display to block. Okay, and then we'll put in an else statement here. Okay, so basically, hey, you know, if it equals block or whatever else it equals, then we'll put it back to none, basically. Okay, fair enough. And that's all we're pretty much going to add here for our JavaScript itself. So let's reload that. Perfect. Okay, add new user. We click on that. So we're good to go for this. In the next one, we're going to deal more with our users, managing them, editing particular users. I don't know. I haven't really decided how I'm going to go about doing that. But we'll see how it goes. And of course, this is just a beginning of the course here. It's a bit extemporaneous. It's kind of my style here. I'm not used to editing videos, things like that. So I'll just kind of lay it out to you basically as it goes. All right, thanks for watching and have a good one.